Yes, sir.
Vice Mayor, I don't know if you're quite on yet. If you're,
Oh, me on? Sorry.
at least I don't know if you're on yet.
Did you? Kurt's good doing it. Thank you. He's like, yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll just go ahead and get it started. All right. Welcome, everybody, to the Tuesday, August 6th, 2024 Lawrence City Commission meeting. And with that, I will get us started with our first agenda item, executive session. Consider a motion to recess into executive session. I would entertain that motion.
I move that we recess into executive session for approximately 15 minutes to discuss privileged legal communications from the city's attorneys regarding laws and their application to city operations pursuant to KSA 754319, subsection B2. The justification for the executive session is to keep attorney-client privilege matters confidential at this time. The City Commission will resume its regular meeting in the City Commission room at approximately 5:16 p.m. after the executive session is concluded.
A second?
Second that motion?
I have a first and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It is approved by 4 votes. 1 is absent. Okay.
Thank you.
executive session, and we have nothing to report. See you all back at 5:45. Thank you. Okay. All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Tuesday, August 6, 2024 Lawrence City Commission meeting. And I'll go ahead and get us started off. Sherry, can you go ahead and give us the rundown?
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, everyone. To minimize distractions during the meeting, please silence your cell phones. If you are attending virtually, please ensure you are muted and your video is off when you are not actively participating in the meeting. The city reserves the right to turn videos off or mute participants. When the mayor calls for public comment, please approach the podium to indicate you wish to speak. Virtual participants should use the raise hand function to indicate they wish to speak. Please leave your virtual hand raised until you are called on. The primary format for accessing or participating in this meeting is in person at City Hall. Virtual access to view or participate in the meeting cannot be guaranteed. The chat function will not be monitored. If you have any trouble, the meeting can be viewed on the city's YouTube channel and cable channel 25. Please state your name and zip code before speaking. All comments will be limited to 3 minutes. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Sherry. All right, and then go ahead and get us started off. I will go to item B, approve the agenda. The City Commission reserves the right to amend, supplement, or reorder the agenda during the meeting. Entertain a motion.
Move to approve the agenda. Second the motion.
Have a first and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That's 4 approved, 1 absent. Item C, recognition, proclamation, and presentation. Proclaim August 4th through 10th, 2024 as National Health Center Week. And I believe we have Elizabeth here for that.
Yeah.
Hello, City Commission. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak today as we recognize National Health Center Week. This celebration is a tribute to the invaluable role that federally qualified health centers like Heartland play in providing access to affordable, high-quality health care regardless of a person's ability to pay. I've witnessed firsthand profound impacts that health centers have had on individuals and families. Heartland serves as a critical lifeline, ensuring that preventative care, chronic disease management, and essential medical, dental, behavioral health, and pharmaceutical services are available to everyone in our community. I've had the distinct honor to bear witness to our staff not only save lives, but transform them. I think our patient, Victor, who is experiencing homelessness, substance abuse, and chronic illness, said it best when he shared, "They have given me the momentum, encouragement, and motivation to all around address and fix issues in my life." This National Health Center Week, we celebrate the dedication and compassion of our healthcare professionals who work tirelessly to meet the diverse needs of our patients. Their commitment goes just beyond medical care by providing a sense of hope and a foundation for a healthier future. Heartland has made remarkable progress on our goals, serving over 21,000 patients last year. And we go beyond our sites to reach the community, including working with organizations like Head Start to reach families so they can get the health screenings so they can stay in childcare, or working within schools so they can have access to preventative and comprehensive oral health through our Healthy Futures program. And we're proud to work in collaboration with organizations addressing homelessness. This year alone, we've provided health care and wraparound services to 367 patients experiencing homelessness with over 2,000 encounters. National Health Center Week serves as a reminder of the indispensable role that health centers play in our lives and in our community. We're beacons of hope, centers of compassion, and welcome all who need care. By celebrating this week, we not only express our gratitude to the tireless and dedicated staff, but recommit ourselves to the idea that quality health care is a fundamental right for all. Thank you for joining us and support and honor and celebrate these champions of community health and wellness.
Thank you, Elizabeth. All right. Whereas for over 50 years, community health centers like Heartland Community Health Center have provided high-quality, affordable, comprehensive primary and preventative health care, dental care, mental health care in our nation's medically underserved communities, delivering value to and having a significant impact on America's healthcare system. And whereas every day, community health centers develop new approaches to integrating a wide range of services beyond primary care, including oral care, behavioral health, pharmacy services, to provide comprehensive care allowing each community member to thrive. And whereas community health centers are governed by patient majority boards, ensuring patients are engaged in their healthcare decisions, and whereas the community health care center model continues to prove an effective means of overcoming barriers to healthcare access, including geography, income, and insurance status, improving health outcomes and reducing healthcare system costs for 21,000 patients served by Heartland each year, and whereas community health centers are on the front lines of emerging healthcare crises, providing access to care for our nation's veterans, addressing the opioid epidemic, and responding to public health threats in the wake of natural disasters. And whereas Natural Health Care Center Week offers the opportunity to celebrate America's more than 1,400 community health care center organizations with over 15,000 service delivery sites, including over 3,600 schools, we honor the dedicated staff, board members, patients, and all those responsible for the continued success and growth since the first health centers opened their doors more than 50 years ago. Now, therefore, I, Bart Littlejohn, Mayor of the City of Lawrence, Kansas, do hereby proclaim August 4th through 10th, 2024 as National Health Center Week, and encourage all Americans to participate in this week by visiting their local health center and celebrating this vital partnership between America's community health centers and the communities they serve. Thank you. Okay, I will go ahead and move us on to item D, consent agendas. The items on the consent agenda are considered under one motion, approved by one motion. Members of the governing body may remove items for separate discussion if desired. Members of the public may remove items identified as quasi-judicial for a separate discussion if desired. Members of the public will be limited to 3 minutes for comments. All right. Would any of the commission like to remove any items?
No, sir.
Okay. Seeing as there's no quasi-judicial, I would entertain a motion then.
I move to approve the consent agenda item, Mayor.
Okay.
Second.
I have a first and a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. That's. I'm sorry about that. That's 4 approved, 1 absent. Okay, that moves us on to, my mouse can work. There we go. Item F, regular agenda items. Consider approving the recommended site selection criteria for Step 2 of the Downtown Transit Station site selection process. Hello, Adam.
Evening, Commissioners. Evening, Mayor. Adam Weigel, Director of Transit. Happy to be here to talk through the second step of Downtown Transit Station site selection process. Get this pulled up. Okay. So, as I mentioned, this is the second step of the process that we are going through to select a site for downtown transit improvements. I was with you all a couple of months ago to talk about the boundary within we will look for site possibilities for where improvements could be made. And tonight we'll talk through the second step, which is all about how are we going to evaluate any site ideas that come before us. So the outlined area you see here is the part of the process that we're in right now. The steering committee has evaluated these site selection criteria a couple of times. We've gone out for the public engagement period, and the steering committee has looked at that information again and made some tweaks and brought it before you all tonight. I'll note that you can see we are running this concurrently with Step 3, public outreach. The third step of the process is asking the public for specific site ideas. So while we finish up the way that we'll actually evaluate any ideas, since we already have our boundary, we can start asking people for input on a specific site if they think that's a good place for us to do that work. Okay, so why do we need these criteria? we need some way to evaluate the sites that are coming before us. A few years ago, we were looking at sites that were city-owned, that were large enough to accommodate the type of improvements we were looking at, but there are a lot of other values people have in our community. We heard a lot of that in summer of 2021. So these criteria should help us start to understand if certain sites are meeting those values that people in the community have. I put a reminder on this page, and you'll see it later in the presentation too, that the way this is structured is not to be very strict with the scoring that comes out of evaluation, but it does give us a starting point for discussion. There may very well be intangibles or certain reasons why one site that scores a little lower might be more desirable from the community, but we need something on paper to start with. We need some way to separate maybe the top group that is meeting more of what people are looking for versus a group that doesn't do as well across multiple criteria that we'll look at. So the public engagement period for this step was about 3 weeks. We did our typical outreach, which includes a press release, social media posts, having a Lawrence Listens survey out that provided people information to respond to. We did desire to have focus groups. To be honest, this part of the process is pretty technical and dense. There's a lot of information that we were asking people to look through. We sought participants in focus groups in a few different ways and could not find enough interested people to join us for an hour discussion, basically, to talk about these different criteria in more depth than what they could see in the survey. The good news is we got quite a few survey respondents, so you'll see in some of the information we got, we think there's still a lot of rich material here that we're able to use to adjust from what we think the public cares about. These are the 14 criteria that the steering committee is recommending we approve and use to evaluate given sites. I have flagged the first 4, which do include some element of a score that would make a site off the table. It would make it not a site that we could consider. So we'll look through each of those criteria and we can talk through them more if you have questions, but I'll highlight those. The first one is about the site just having enough physical space for 5 bus bays and the amenities that we are looking to provide. There are a few parking lot sites that the city is looking to do redevelopments on, and the downtown station site does have federal money in it. So we talked with our state partners who we won that federal grant from and received the guidance that they are not interested in us looking at a public-private type development. And so the second criteria is more or less having us avoid the 3 parking lots that the city is looking for proposals to come in for different types of developments in the downtown area. The third criteria is about ownership, property ownership. We have left on the table the idea of privately owned sites being considered, but private property owners must be willing to engage in discussion of sale of that property so that we can develop upon it. So in the event that a member of the public recommends a privately owned site, we will be touching base with that property owner to understand their interest in selling, not negotiating price. But if private property owners say we are unwilling to talk about the sale of a property, then that effectively takes it off the table for consideration of transit improvements. The fourth criteria that could result in a site not being viable is if it's in a FEMA flood hazard zone. So there are a couple of those areas within the boundary that was solidified a couple of months ago. And so if there are recommendations on those sites, we wouldn't be able to move forward just based on inability to use federal funds to build in a flood hazard zone. I won't walk through the rest of them. We'll see them as we walk through the presentation, but happy to come back to any of these to talk further. So like I mentioned, we got pretty good participation in the survey, 117 respondents. There were about 12% of folks whose comments were more about not wanting the project to move forward at all. So there was a small percentage that we didn't get feedback directly on the criteria from. As a general note, there was mostly positive response to what was put forward, and you can see the percentages here of each of the 14 criteria of people that supported those criteria moving forward as proposed. No changes to the wording, to the content, to the way it was scored. So there are some lower scoring ones which we can talk about as we walk through these. A couple of big takeaways. With content like this, it was tricky to know how much information to provide within the context of the survey. There's a lot of information needed to fully digest each of the criteria. So some respondents wanted more. They wanted more explanation for each of the criteria. There was a lot of discussion around the weights of scoring, and we'll talk about that later in the presentation too. People wondering why something was able to earn more points or less points versus other criteria. I note here that there was certainly a number of comments that suggest people were concerned that the decision about what site or group of sites to look at for downtown transit would be too focused on a single criteria. So people were worried in both directions. I hope it's not based too much on parking space mitigation. I hope it's not based too much on its closeness to the center of the boundary area that we're looking at. So hopefully you'll see as we walk through this, we're trying to balance a lot of different values that the community has. I provided as a link to this night's packet the full report that we developed for our public engagement processes. So it has deeper information about each of these graphs. I wanted to show them to you and highlight a few things. But a couple of things I will note. In all the graphs, you'll see the largest bar being that kind of supportive of keeping the criteria in the scoring as it was proposed. The people who responded in one of the other three categories, either wanting changes to the criteria, the way it was worded, how it was scored, or suggesting elimination, people who indicated those answers didn't always provide content feedback for us along with their selection of that item. So we had to do our best to pull together the qualitative information we got from the survey and try to be honest about what we heard in each response to the criteria. But it was challenging, I'll say that. So these first couple criteria you can see have relatively high support. There were some comments related to the RFP parking lots that the city is looking at for redevelopment, that folks wanted those still on the table for options, but we're proposing that it not be that way given what KDOT's feedback has been to us. Similarly, high support on these two. I'll highlight the comments on these couple of criteria about elimination. When it came to historic resources and how close it would be to historic properties and also zoning, there were a lot of comments related to, well, that shouldn't prevent the process from moving forward. You just have to evaluate changing zoning or meeting the criteria of historic resources. That is the way these two criteria are structured. So if something's not zoned correctly or it's right by a historic structure, that does not take it off the table. It would mean a higher level of effort for the project to make sure it met the different standards that each of those criteria would have.
Adam, can you hold up a sec?
Sure.
Sherry, can we have somebody, if they can't quite hear us out there, run outside and let them know to kind of keep it down a little bit? It's a little bit distracting. We can kind of hear it in here.
All right, next couple of criteria related to impact to parking spaces, impact to park space. Nearness to the center of downtown. In many of these criteria, I'll use criteria number 9 as an example. There were comments that suggested we make revisions in both directions. So on criterion number 9, there were people interested in us only considering sites that were within 5 minutes of the center point of the area we were looking at and excluding all the rest of the area. There were other comments that said we should place a higher value on sites on the periphery of downtown. So that was a theme that came up throughout this and highlights, I think, the differing values and what people are looking for as they are concerned about what sites might be chosen. There's some technical things we wanted to look at. When it comes to keeping buses on time, an extra few minutes of circulation to approach a site from the right direction can make a difference at buses staying on time or not, which you see in criterion 11. And with 12, there are certainly a lot of lessons learned with the Central Station project on cost drivers, things like significant slope that require large retaining walls or moving a lot of material, things like that we wanted to look at and consider cost drivers that might come up on a site. We struggle with a lot of downtown events and the way we react to street closures, parades, things like that. So site considerations for that, as well as traffic flows. So in the summer of 2021, one of the ideas that came up was, is there a willingness to create more one-way streets to carve out enough space for buses that could create other traffic flow impacts? So that's something we want to look at in case any site ideas would require changes to how automobiles move. We need to think about how that will impact other areas nearby. So through all of these criteria, the steering committee took an approach in a couple of key areas. So first we walked through and looked at a lot of the comments that came through the public engagement period and just talked through if there needed to be revisions to the criteria. Do we need to add or remove anything? And weighting was a big issue that came up. So people wanting certain criteria to be worth more or less. So there's a lot of discussion around weighting. The steering committee did talk about, should all 14 criteria be weighted equally at this point, or should they have the discussion about which might need to be worth more based on community values. You'll see on the next slide that the direction that discussion went with the steering committee was to recommend weighting all 14 criteria equally. Now, there's some complexity in this. Each of these criteria has different natural categories of scoring. If you look down at number 7, it's related to gain or loss of parking spaces. There's a larger spectrum of impact that could have. You could gain spaces or you could lose certain numbers of spaces. So that particular criterion had the possibility of scoring as low as a 1 if more than 30 parking spaces were lost, and as high as a 5 if there was a gain in parking spaces. Some members of the public brought up what the committee believed was a good point, which is, the top score of that criterion is 5 points. If you score the best you can on impacts to park space, you only get 2 points. So there was a concern about, do we really want to weight one of those more than another? So the direction this discussion went was to apply a factor across all criteria that makes every one of them worth the same score if it scores the best that it can. So on every criteria, if it scores its top option, it results in 2.5 points. And that was one way that the steering committee thought would equalize the values for now and wait until scores are actually applied to sites to start having more of the value discussions if something rose to the top. I do add the reminder on this page again, as we're trying to wrestle with how do we apply some measure to each site idea. The score helps us with the starting point. The the sites that do best among all the different values that the community has should score in the higher echelons. The one that maybe falls a little shorter should score less. The action requested from you all is to approve these criteria so that we can use it to start applying this scoring model to sites that are coming in. The steering committee has scheduled 2 meetings to talk through those scores and decide their rank order and bring back a list to you all in October of their top 3 to 5 recommended sites for moving into the concept phase. I put on some of the next steps beyond the steering committee's scope of work. So once we get through site selection down to the 3 concept sites, we're looking at design work that would take us until about a year from now, and construction work starting next summer all the way through August of 2026 is when we would plan to open some future site with the change of new routes in that year. I did make a note here, and I expect to go back and answer some questions about things. Discretion if we have missed a criteria that you believe needs included. If you want to have discussion about equal weights versus unequal weights of different criteria, those are adjustments we should make now before we start applying scores. That's the content I have for tonight. Happy to go back to anything you all need.
Thank you, Adam. All right, any questions for Adam?
I have one, about the sawtooth.
Go ahead, Vice Mayor.
I get off the table on most of these. Number 1, which is the 5 sawtooth bays, that's pretty much a no. That's a deal killer. If there's not enough room for, if there's 4 and all the other amenities, we can't go forward unless we have 5. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And that's based on what exactly?
Downtown's currently served by 5 routes. To functionally allow people to transfer in both directions of travel, you need to have all buses here at the same time.
And do they all arrive and depart at the same time? Is that part of the current schedule right now?
Correct.
Okay, I want to make sure. And so how many bays do we have at the central station?
We have 8 bays for local routes and 2 for regional routes.
Okay, thanks. That's it.
Commissioner Sellers?
Adam, on criteria 7 and 8, just with the factors, I didn't know if, I'm looking at these and wanting to hear maybe more about how discussion went with these, because I understand a factor of parking impact may hit someone differently than the number. However, I feel like one is kind of a chicken and egg kind of thing. So when I'm looking at the factor weights of these, I'm a bit conflicted to, I don't want to say they're duplicative, but it's almost like one without the other. So would you have the discussion if one was left off? So I didn't know if maybe if you can share a little bit of maybe in some of the discussions that you had with the steering committee, what were their thoughts on these, and whether there was a more conversation around number of parking spots as it relates to just parking space impacted, and whether one felt that at least there was something there that maybe could lean in one direction or the other.
Yeah. Well, so that discussion, there's the steering committee has a variety of different voices, different perspectives on it. There are a lot of sensitivities to available parking in the downtown area, and that issue was front and center in summer of 2021.
Right.
So I think from staff's perspective, we saw that as a key issue that people want considered and they want significant consideration to. There are certainly members on the committee that are frequent riders who, as you mentioned, chicken and egg, that there is capacity to carry more people in less space, less physical space on a bus than there is 1 or 2 people per automobile in a parking spot. Right. So, I always try to talk through that it's easy for it to become bus versus other transportation modes when it should be all kind of working in the same space and functioning together. So the discussion had at the steering committee was, related to weighting of this, and so there was comfort by them as it came to the point of, okay, if there's high impact number of parking spaces lost, that provides, a certain score that's equivalent to another value that community members have if the site would dig into an existing park space, for example.
Okay.
So the committee talked it through and was not comfortable at this time weighting one more than the other, which is why you see the factors come in and try to equalize things. I'll add that it is difficult without having yet applied these to sites, and that's one of the challenges in trying to stay on timeline. There may be things that emerge through the scoring process of different sites that make you all, that make the steering committee think, probably should have weighted that differently or scored that differently. And that's why I think the intent of this is to try to show that considering a lot of things, and the scores that come out of this are not steadfast. If you all believe that site number 5 is better than site number 3 for some different reasons, I think that's where a community conversation comes to elevate something.
Thank you, Adam. I appreciate that.
I had a question on, I believe it was criteria 5 and 9. It seems to be the lowest scoring ones. Did you have any additional information about those?
Yes. So 5 was, both 5 and 6 really, a lot of the comments were related to the city can meet the needs of being in a historic context area. So you don't need to score this or consider it. It's something that can be overcome. The steering committee did talk about a couple of these and should they be eliminated, but ended up thinking that it was important that we show that it's a consideration and it's scored, and we're not unconcerned with historic resources impacts on any site that might be chosen. So those were some of the eliminate or change or revise that particular criteria is people didn't see it as relevant or preventing a development of a site into a transit facility. Number 9 was one of the top criteria where people had opposing views on on how that one should be scored. So the primary dissenting comments related to how close to the center of downtown should a site be was people saying this needs to be changed to only consider the very central sites, because that's the most forward thinking, it's the most convenient for a high high usage vehicle that brings a lot of people into one spot. There were other folks that said that's going to displace parking, and so we need to put these as far to the edges as possible so as not to displace the high value stuff that's already in the center of downtown. So those were the 2 different voices that we're looking to recommend changes on number 9.
Thank you.
Can I ask one question?
Sure, Vice Mayor.
I thought you may have addressed this, but as it relates to the HRC or the historical context, if we're using federal funds, don't we need to meet the requirements of the historical portion of NEPA anyway? So we can't remove it. It has to be something we look at, but whether we use it as a criteria, I guess, is really honest. The question, as you said, we can mitigate any problem if we see one. But so we do have to comply with the regulations anyway, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
So when we get to ideally October of this year, we'll be at the place where hopefully there will be 3 to 5 sites that you all are comfortable moving into the concept phase. At that time, KDOT and FDA have told us that's when they'll start that NEPA review process. They won't do it when there's
Yeah,
20
no way,
options.
no way.
But as we get down, they'll do NEPA review that'll look at environmental, it'll look at historic resources. And I think certainly we have a desire to fit, visually wherever we will be. So I think that will be something that definitely.
Thank you.
we need.
Thank you, Mayor.
Any additional questions? All right. Thank you, Adam. Since this is an agenda item, I'll open it up to public comment on this item. Not seeing any here in the room. Sherry, is there any on Zoom?
There is not.
Okay, bringing it back to us. Any further discussion or comments on this?
Yes, sir, Mayor.
Adam, I know we've gone back and forth with the discussion on proximity of a downtown station, and I know in our initial conversations, we had talked about high level where there could be some potential sites, maybe around 11th or whatnot. When I look at question 9, and we're talking about within 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes of center downtown, my initial inclination goes to, if we're even considering something 10 or 15 minutes, that could potentially impact, I don't want to assume, could it potentially impact routes? And are we then looking at changing routes in order to accommodate something that is 10 minutes away from downtown to ensure that we're staying on schedule and on time with our other spots?
Yeah, so that brings up an important clarification on that one. As we talk about 5, 10, 15 minutes, that's walking time.
Okay.
So the purpose of that criteria is that people want to, same as with they're driving a car or biking or anything else, they want to get close to the front door of the place they're trying to go to. They don't want to have to walk another 10 or 15 minutes typically. And so I don't foresee issues with route structure as it relates to that. If a site were to end up on one of the edges, the far south part of the boundary or far north, what have you, routes would certainly approach in such a way where there would be stops that would let people, if they needed to reach a different destination than the transfer point, get off and still be relatively close to their destination. So I think route structure-wise, we'll be able to mitigate that concern.
I mean, Adam, I appreciate the presentation. I appreciate us staying on task and on schedule with this. Like I said, 7 and 8 is kind of really titchy with me right now, but I think, as you said, as we continue to go through the process and see how those site selections come out, then we can see how that plays out. I think particularly just 1, 7, 8, or 9, just in looking at those, because of prior conversations we had, I'm worried that folks are, I don't want us, to mitigate from having a site downtown to accommodate one's thoughts of parking or the idea of taking away from parking. And so that we create this, I don't want to say that we serve the purpose, but also we create another disadvantage in it. And so then we're slowly trying to create, we're just mitigating the gap when there's no gap there to begin with. So I think for that point, I'm just gonna have to wait till the steering committee presents those to us. But I know at least for those 3, for criteria 7, 8, 9, 7 is inedible. I know with these, the idea of lost and gained, I get it, but we know that there's going to be an advantage. One can see it as an advantage, one can see it as a disadvantage, and I know it's just going to be that it's just the hamster wheel piece. It's reverberating, so it's one of those that's just kind of stuck in my craw, and I'm not going to get rid of it. So hearing about the factors, I'm fine with that. Just 7 in particular criteria. 7 is just one I'm just going to have to look for as the other come together. 8 I'm fine with. 9 is going to be one I'm going to looking for real closely once we get those selections come in. Outside of that, I mean, the criteria hit areas that we need to address. I looked at some of the comments that came back from the community. I think a lot of that's just teachable pieces. I see that a lot of individuals felt that some of the criteria were a little high level. I think just by the nature of the work, it's just going to be that. And so hopefully folks will continue to log in, check into the website, reach out to steering committee folks so they can understand those nuances. But I mean, you're keeping it going, and I think we have a set of criteria here that will allow us to have several options that us as a commission will be able to come back and hopefully agree upon something here that makes sense, that we can finally close the gap on this piece. So thank you for this. I have no objections to it.
Yeah. I have no objections to it. Thank you for putting that together as well.
We're good. We're good. I'll go ahead and make a motion.
All right.
Approve the recommended site selection criteria for Step 2 of the Downtown Transit Station site selection process.
Second that motion.
I have a first and a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. It is approved by 4 and 1 absent. All right, moving on to item G, work session items. The work session provides an opportunity for the City Commission to discuss items in greater detail. The Commission will take no binding action on these items presented during this time. Work session topics are eligible for public comments. Members of the public will be limited to 3 minutes for comments. And I might add also in here, if we could keep the cross chatter to a minimum, the sound kind of carries a little bit in this room, so I'd appreciate it. There you go, Brian.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Commissioners. Happy to be here tonight to go over a workforce session, and there it goes. The magic has begun. Am I controlling it, Kurt?
I tried the enter key on the keyboard. Oh, that's always disappointing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're supposed to be driving.
Okay, thank you. All right, apologies. This is the first, I would say, presentation. You hear a lot about the outcomes and the outcome champions presenting around the strategic plan tonight. I'm happy to announce I'm the first commitment champion to be up here to talk about efficient and effective processes. So what does that mean? Is really looking at the work we do through a lens of process improvement, to keep it simple. But tonight on the agenda, we're going to cover just a few things, what those commitments are, just to refamiliarize yourself with the strategic plan and those commitments, what we do, and we work with the outcome champions, some of the key priorities that I've identified, and I want to highlight a program that we recently started, which is our process improvement timeline, and then share some exciting things around our key performance indicators. So as I mentioned, the commitments are here to start showing the work that they're doing in collaboration with the outcome champions. And essentially the commitments from our website is the way we do our work is as important as what we do. The city will ensure we're following through on our 5 community outcomes with the commitments to how our team will do the work. The community we create is reflected in the decisions that our employees will make every day. And the reflection, which are, if you show on the screen right now, are the 6 commitments. And those 6 commitments are community engagement, sound fiscal stewardship, efficient and effective process, which I'll talk about tonight, engaged and empowered teams, environmental sustainability, and equity and inclusion. So what I'm going to focus on tonight is efficient and effective processes, which is really, as I mentioned earlier, is looking at the lens of a process improvement as we work through the collaboratively with the other outcome champions. And it's an intentional and consistent delivery of city services. We focus on improvement by working collaboratively to understand needs, research, adapt, and develop successful solutions. There are trustworthy processes that I'll talk a little bit about tonight, and they're the foundation for the delivery of the city services. So again, we see outcome champions up here talking about the different outcomes. The 5 outcomes here are listed below, and I'm going to step through a little crosswalk, as I like to call it, kind of my jargon. if you look across the top, you'll see the different outcomes and the key performance indicators that are listed on the website. And you're probably wondering, what do those numbers mean? Well, I didn't memorize all the numbers, but if you can look across the top row, you can see that there's unmistakable identity, strong, welcoming neighborhoods, safe and secure, et cetera, et cetera. On the left side, if you look down through the 6 rows, you'll see those commitments. And tonight is what I'm going to talk about is the efficient and effective processes. So as I work with Parks and Rec, and we look at, one of their outcomes is to look at the number of people that have visited a trail or park or an event, I work with them from a process improvement standpoint. How can we be more efficient? How can we be more effective? Same with safe and secure. How many crimes per 1,000 residents? That's an outcome that Chief Lockhart looks at. Of course, we work with him to make sure that we can improve that process where possible. So in my short tenure here, I've learned a lot about this additional role as being the IT director here at the city. And some gaps I've identified, we put to work in some of those key priorities here, and I wanted to highlight those tonight. One, obviously, is the efficient, effective process champion, is to focus on those outcomes with outcome champions. But I've identified some other areas where we can improve the process, where there are some processes that need to be improved here at the city. And so I'm going to highlight the 3 programs. If you look at items 2, 3, and 4, we have a process improvement program that's new. It's still in its infancy, but I want to highlight that here in just a couple minutes. We have a data analytics research team. We like to build a data analytics program here. We've got a great team that we've assembled throughout the city. And then, of course, we have a project management office, which focuses also on strong processes around governance and managing projects across the city, technology specifically. So to talk about the process improvement timeline, we established this program with resources within our department, shifting some things around, working with other departments. We actually started this program in January, and we already have a charter approved in April. We established a steering committee that actually looks at all the work that has come through this program, and they actually give us direction and guidance and approval on these projects. We have a citywide discovery process that was completed recently, and we have probably over 100 projects that have made that list. We're really excited about the work, and there's some gaps out there, obviously, but that list will come for scoring and approval to the steering committee. There's also some other things in the timeline here, as I highlighted, that we haven't hit yet, but we'll see some approvals in August with those projects that we've identified as a gap here. The thing I'm really excited about, you all know that we do measure these outcomes and these commitments through our key performance indicators. You'll see on the website we've had out there for a few years, we've got some KPIs that are a little bit static. What I want to just highlight tonight quickly is we've got some KPIs here in a different form that are more dynamic. And we've worked with a new process to identify ways we can get more timely and accurate feedback on the KPIs, not only to the people we report to here internally, but also to the public. And I think that's important. You'll start to see that we've pushed some of these new dashboards out to the strategic plan out on the public website. So I'm very excited about this part. This is the thing that gets me going as a technologist. And I will pause for questions.
Okay. Thank you, Brian. Any questions for Brian?
Brian, go back to the crosswalk for me. You got me excited there, and then we did the x-axis and the y-axis, and then we had numbers and you lost me. So cross is the outcomes. That's our x-axis. Our y-axis is the commitments. What do the numbers mean again?
So the numbers are, if you look out on the public website, and again, I didn't memorize those, I apologize, but for example, unmistakable identity 2, which is in row 2, the unmistakable identity outcome champion works with the community engagement champion on that particular item. So it's listed on the website as UI-2.
So it aligns with the KPI.
Correct. Yes, yes, ma'am.
And then as far as your DART team, will that rollout come as part of the process of the steering committee? Or how does that, or are they already working, and how do those updates get cycled through different departments and whatnot?
Sure. So one of the gaps we identified in this process improvement, prior to the process improvement program, is some data needs within the city. We don't have an official data analytics program. In many organizations that I've worked for, we had very mature and established data analytics program, and so we've worked with some really smart people within the city at different levels in the departments to start again, data analytics research team, so we can start to evaluate the needs and the gaps that we have here, so eventually we can build a program.
Okay.
So I don't know if that answered your question, but I'd be happy to dive into that a little bit more.
So will that then merge into a lot of the GPS work so that we'll see more robust GPS data discussions so that things... Yes.
Okay.
We'll
be able to, as somebody likes to say here in the organization, we'll have more data-driven decisions through better data and KPIs and dashboards that will be able to be available internally and externally.
Okay. I got a question comment, but I'll wait till after public comment.
Okay.
That's all I have, Mayor.
All right. No additional questions, and open it. Thank you, Brian. Open it up for public comment. Not seeing any here in the room. Sherry, any on Zoom?
Yes. Stephen Watts.
Hi, I appreciate the opportunity to weigh in on this, and I appreciate Mr. Thomas's presentation. It is a little bit confusing why the head figure for IT is making this presentation, but I understand the necessity to use what we have. Our town's website continues to be an issue, and there has been some movement, but not a whole lot can happen. I noted that Mr. Thomas was speaking about, let me see here. Oh, goodness, here, look at that. Data analytics program. So at any rate, as long as the town website is consistent with what we're doing, it is important to keep it current. Mr. Thomas and his staff have been helpful in this arena, and let's hope that we can keep it in that area as our town grows and as the website needs constant monitoring and updating. Thank you.
That's all the comments, Mayor.
Okay, bringing it back to us. Commissioner Sellers?
Yeah, just Brian, as far as the presentation, I love it. When I saw the crosswalk pop up, it rang just happy news to my heart. One of the things when I was part of the Human Relations Commission, it was wanting to be able to help the commission there try to articulate the crosswalk between the outcomes and commitments. I think we were a little bit ahead of our time. I still believe that is something that as we start to onboard new members to our boards and commissions, that we take the time to help navigate that space with our boards and commissions, because as long as it's work that you're doing internally, they are an extension of the governing body. And so I would like to see, I think a lot of times what I'm hearing from folks who have served on boards is that they don't recognize the resources that they have available to them. And oftentimes that's maybe miscommunication between their staff liaison or just not fully being able to articulate what it is that they need. And so in hopes that now that we're getting updates from commitment areas, that as commissioners, we're crosswalking those relationships and thinking of things ahead of time so that as you come to us, we have those, but most importantly, being able to empower our boards and commissions to think in that same way. And so as, you know, I'm just going to continue to push that. You know, I love this. I think it'll be able to help our boards and commissions look at some of our KPIs to, as we think about this not being a static document, this is a living, breathing, our strategic plan is living and breathing, it's dynamic, so that as we're thinking about, as commissioners, thinking about KPIs that may need to be tweaked or even repealed, that are, you know, any board or commission that speaks to that or believes that they have a duty to that outcome or a certain commitment, they will then share that. So it's reciprocal. So thank you for sharing this. Thank you for this crosswalk. I know that this is the first one, and so there's only so much to give, but I appreciate that we're starting to think about the analytics piece, and we're using we're finding a way to figure out how to bring our data together to tell the story. And I think that's all I've been asking for when it comes to this particular, that there's so much data that can help us tell the story about our KPIs, what we're missing, either what we're looking at in a different light that is just not a true story, or, you know, what it is, some other things that we can go after. And so you're getting it to that point, and I can only be, you know, as the data geek on the commission, I'm happy to see where this is going, and I look forward to the future presentation. So thank you, Brian.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Okay. Thank you for the presentation, Brian. Really appreciate it. Look forward to the progress. All right. I want to go ahead and check in, make sure that we're all good. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'll move us on to item H, commission items. Consider approving the advisory board appointments. Okay. This is a commission item. I thought, Sherry, do you have anything to tell us or anything, or you just want us to dive in?
I think it would be great for you all to just dive in.
Okay. All right. I was thinking that we go through this board by board. So, and if you had any issues or questions with it, just go ahead and pop up. First one up is the Affordable Housing Advisory Board.
Mm-hmm. I'm fine.
Okay. The Aviation Advisory Board.
Sherry, do you need us to vote on these individually?
Or, yeah. Okay.
If you are good with that board, if you could make a motion on
Okay.
appointing, you know, those folks to that board, that'd be great, and we can move on to the
Okay.
Okay.
next one. So we'll need action on each, not each name, but as long as you agree on the group that's listed.
Would like a motion to approve the nominees for Affordable Housing Advisory Board as presented?
I second that motion.
Hey.
Well, we should probably start with the affordable. Oh, did you say?
Yeah, she said that.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
she-
okay,
That's just
cool.
how good I was.
Okay, cool. All right. Thank you. All right. Have a first and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Let's approve four by approval in four, and one is absent. Aviation Advisory Board. Any questions regarding that?
I don't believe so, sir. Nope.
No, Mayor. I move that we approve the nominees for Aviation Advisory Board as presented.
Okay.
Second.
Have a first and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. As for an approval, one absent. Community Police Review Board. Any questions about that?
No, Mayor.
Okay. Would entertain.
I move that we approve the nominees for Community Police Review Board as presented.
Second the motion.
I have a first and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 None opposed. Oh, four approved, one absent, I'm sorry. None opposed. Connected City Advisory Board. Any questions about that one?
No, Mayor.
All right.
I move that we approve the nominees for Connected City Advisory Board as presented.
Second.
I have a first and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Approved by four, one absent. Environmental Sustainability Advisory Board. Any questions regarding that one?
I don't believe so, Mayor.
Okay.
I move that we approve the nominees for Environmental Sustainability Advisory Board as presented.
Second?
I have a first and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Approved by 4, 1 absent. Historic Resources Commission. Any comments or questions about that one?
Nope.
I don't believe so. Nope.
Okay.
All right, I move that we approve the nominees for Historic Resources Commission as presented.
Is there a second on?
Second the motion?
All right. A first and a second. That's all right. A first and a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. 4 approved, 1 absent. Okay. Human Relations Commission. Any questions or comments regarding that one?
No, sir.
Not seeing any.
All right, and I move that we approve the nominees for Human Relations Commission as presented.
Second.
I have a first and a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. 4 approved, 1 absent.
Sorry.
I thought it was coming. 4 approved, 1 absent. All right, Lawrence Cultural Arts Commission. Any questions or anything about that one? All right.
I move that we approve the nominees for the Lawrence Cultural Arts Commission as presented.
Second the motion?
I have a first and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Approved by 4, 1 absent. And Parks and Rec Advisory Board. Any questions regarding that? Okay.
I move that we approve the nominees for Parks and Recreation Advisory Board as presented.
Second.
I have a first and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
4 approved, 1 absent. And Downtown Transit Station Steering Committee, looks like that one is an appointment by the library, so I don't think we really need to do that
You do
one.
not need to take action.
Okay.
Just more notification to you all of who they chose.
Gotcha.
All right.
All right. Any commission items?
I have a question. I know typically around this time is when we receive an update from LCS. And I know that in the last year, we did several addendums, and then we had an agreement. So I didn't know when we're due to get reporting from them. And if so, if we can make that a presentation.
To that, I don't know if it was an annual process where they came and presented this time of year. I do remember that happening last year when there were some questions about the funding agreement, and we did multiple installments throughout the year. Their contract does go, I think, through March or April, but they've done a lot of work, and I think it would be a good time to invite James to
Yeah.
come and talk about some of that good work.
Because I would like to, at least hear an update for that. I do have some thoughts on some systems or controls that may relate to some of the dynamics with staff and leadership. But I think it would be good for us to have an update from him, whether it's just us with the city or joint with the city and county. But I would like for us to have at least visit with him, get an update on some of the work that's been done to date.
I'd be down for that. Did you need 3?
We can work on scheduling it.
Looks like the
over here.
Yeah.
Looks like the vice mayor's
Please.
nodding, so.
September, October timeframe? October, okay.
October,
Okay.
yeah.
Past budget, okay.
Yeah.
That's all I have, Mayor.
Okay. Not seeing any additional commission items. Move us on to the city manager's report. And Craig?
Yo,
There's an ex parte communication on there for your preparation and also then our future agenda items.
Okay. Any questions regarding that for Craig?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
I know we've gone away for our future agenda items, our parking lot. Is there no cars in the parking lot?
I don't think so.
Okay.
But, I can do a review, but we've done a pretty good job of getting everything scheduled out. If you are thinking of something I'm missing, please let me know.
No. I know Commissioner Finkeldye's not here, and I know we've had some, with the budget conversations, we've had some back and forth.
excuse me, what happened to public input on commission items, please?
I will interject on this. Commission items, there is no public input or no public comment on commission items, sir. So,
Where's it say that?
Yep.
Sherry,
Ew.
can you go ahead and mute that?
I don't want to preempt myself since Commissioner Finkeldine not here, but I know we've talked a little bit back and forth about agreements or whatnot, and I noticed we haven't had a joint meeting with the county, so I know we had one earlier in the year, but, so I'll just leave that. My biggest question was the parking lot item, so I'll go back in and take a look, and Sherry, we can,
Okay.
if we missed something, you can let us know.
Yeah, there was one for you all with the county, but we took that off after you had the meeting.
Yeah.
And then you did have one with the school district, but we took that off as well, so I
Is
guess
it
we
that
can
one?
put that
Yeah.
back on since that was canceled, but it's still on our radar.
Okay.
Any comments on the agenda?
Any additional questions? Okay. All right. If there are not any additional questions, it's a public comment item. Open it up for public comment. Not seeing any in the room. Sherry, any on Zoom? All right.
Stephen Watts.
Okay.
Mr. Watts, you're muted.
Okay. I'm confused. Why is there no comment on commission items, please? Are you going to wait for 3 minutes to go by like that, Bert? I see you cheesing away there, Mike. Come on, man. I don't like this. What's going on? Why is there no comment on commission items, please?
Point of order, not germane to the topic.
Point of order. I claim my time back.
Who's over there? Legislating for.
Sir, if you will not reference any of the items on the city manager report, I will have to go ahead and cease your broadcast there. Or your
All right,
ability.
I'll talk about the city manager report. Thank you. No comment on commission items. When did this rule happen? All right, for the city manager's report, we need a report on when are we going to have an effective community police review board, sir? The manager needs to report on this. At the meeting on Saturday and the one before that, we had a bloviating, logorrhea infected Amber Sellers in there trying to stop the people from talking. That's not right. Or I don't think it's right.
Point of order.
I need for the city manager, please, to report on that. Additionally, I need for the city manager to report on why.
Sir, this is not germane to the report itself.
Okay.
If you would like.
I'm sorry. We'll go back to this, and that is, why is the city manager's office not allowing the town to release line item budget matters? The city manager has requested that we talk, or that the citizens provide input with respect to
Sir,
how to best use
you're
this
not
budget.
referring to anything on the report itself or any of the senators.
Go fuck yourself, Bart.
All right. Can you go ahead and cease his broadcast there, or his ability to go ahead and Zoom, Sherry?
Yep.
Thank you. All right, commission calendar.
I know the commission calendar only goes to September, but I'm not going to be here the first Tuesday in November, so I just wanted to go ahead and get that on your radar, Sherry.
First Tuesday of November? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I don't have anything for the calendar. Okay. All right. I'll move us on. Next item, this is the end of the live broadcast for Zoom. Remaining items are not broadcast in the city's YouTube channel and cable channel 25. I'll go ahead and give it a beat for a couple seconds.